Welcome to this discussion on public investment fund reporting requirements. I am Angelica Hernandez, Deputy Executive Director of the California Debt and Investment Advisory Commission. This session addresses the reporting requirements placed on public agencies by the California Government Code. The purpose of these reports is to provide information about the investment program to the local agency's governing board, oversight committee, executive staff, auditors, and the public. Questions about public agency investment reporting have been raised since they were added to the Government Code, and I hope this discussion will help your agency understand their reporting requirements and how to fulfill them. In the next few minutes, I will identify the Government Code sections that apply to public agency investment reporting, discuss the required contents for these reports, and lastly, I'll describe some resources published by CDIAC that will also address public agency investment reporting. Reporting requirements and recommendations are imposed on local agencies by Government Code sections 53607 and 53646. It is important to note that these sections establish a minimum threshold for reporting. The public agency can elect to provide more information, or the governing board can request more information than is required by statute. The monthly transaction report is required pursuant to Government Code section 53607. Under this statute, a legislative body is authorized to delegate the investment function to a local agency's treasurer. Local agency treasurers that have been delegated the authority to invest or reinvest funds or to sell or exchange securities by their governing board under section 5307 are required to submit a monthly transaction report to the legislative body. The requirement to submit the transaction report lasts until the governing board's delegation is revoked or expires. One of the most commonly asked questions of CDIAC is about the content of the monthly transaction report. Unfortunately, the code in this instance does not provide details about the contents of this report. So CDIAC recommends that an agency take a plain read of the code and develop the information that your agency feels is appropriate to meet this reporting requirement. Keep in mind, your governing board can request specific information to be included in the report. Another option for a local agency is to reach out to see how their peers are handling this requirement. The quarterly investment report is required under California Government Code section 53646B, which states that a treasurer or chief fiscal officer may prepare a quarterly report to the chief executive officer, internal auditor, and governing body. If the quarterly investment portfolio report is submitted, it must contain certain information, including a listing of investments, fund balances, and return on investments made by the local agency. Quarterly reports should reflect the current positions and past performance of a portfolio of investments for the period of time covered by the report. This report must be submitted to the governing board at a public meeting within 30 days after the end of the quarter. The code does not specify if the report is an action or informational item at that public meeting. It is important to note that statute does allow for the governing body to elect to receive this report on a monthly basis rather than quarterly, and often is submitted combined with the monthly transactions report. Unlike the monthly transactions report, Government Code does specify the contents of the quarterly report. If this report is provided, it should include a description of all investments held in the investment portfolio and the elements enumerated in statute that are reflected on the screen. In addition to the description of investments, the quarterly report also must include a description of any of the local agency's funds, investments, or programs that are under the management of outside parties, such as LAIF, investment pools, outside money managers, and securities lending agents. Statute also suggests that for local agency investments that have been placed in LAIF, in a county investment pool, or in insured accounts in credit unions, banks, or savings and loan associations, the most recent statement or statements received by the local agency from these institutions can be submitted in lieu of the information described on the screen. In addition, the quarterly report can include any additional information that the governing body deems necessary or useful in overseeing its investment function. CDIAC provides investment-related resources for local public agency. Our library of resources features issue briefs on current investment topics such as socially responsible investing, option-adjusted spread, or securitized investments, and also includes 2 publications that serve as investment resources. The California Public Fund Investment Primer is a good investment resource, especially for those new to public fund investing. This document has a more textbook feel. It takes a more academic approach to investments, providing explanations of investment terms and concepts. Chapter 3 of the Investment Primer contains information on investment reporting requirements, covering much of what is in this presentation. Appendix B of the Primer features a sample quarterly report. Not long after the Orange County bankruptcy, CDIAC developed the Local Agency Investment Guidelines, often referred to as the LAIG or the LAIG. The LAIG was developed to aid local agencies in meeting new statutory requirements applied to public fund investment activities. The LAIG is more of a practical guide and is laid out in a question and answer format, addressing commonly asked investment-related questions. Questions on reporting requirements have been fielded by CDIAC since those requirements were added to statute. Chapter 3 of the LAIG is focused on public agency investment reporting requirements, covering much of the content in this presentation. For each question in LAIG, there is a description of the minimum legal requirements, including government code section references, and then a consensus recommendation. These consensus recommendations reflect best practices and are put forward by a group of public investment professionals that include not only public agency treasurers and investment officers, but also investment advisors, brokers, and tax counsel. The LAIG is updated annually, primarily for changes to state law, but any changes at the federal level that may impact public fund investing are incorporated as well. Throughout the year, CDIAC monitors both state and federal legislation. The bills we monitor are published on our Regulatory Resources for Municipal Issues webpage. While the LAIG is a great reference that contains best practices, it is not a substitute for legal advice. And when there is doubt about a code section, CDIAC always recommends that public agencies follow up with their legal counsel. I hope you will use CDIAC as a reference for your public fund investment questions. To complement this discussion on statutory reporting requirements for public fund investments, there is a 30-minute agency profile of the cities of Tustin and Newport Beach that address practical considerations for day-to-day accounting and financial reporting. Thank you for joining this discussion.